I am so excited. This is the first episode of the Jump Tapes. It is stories of people that were unpacking that made strategic jumps in their careers. And today's guest is Aundria Roberts, who is a good friend of mine. She is an amazing entrepreneur and life coach. She left lesson planning for life planning, and now she's helping others to find their passions. And she's also hosting for us a webinar coming up called Paralysis to Pursuit, which is all about helping people to find their passions in life and to go after them and take action. Andrea, thank you so much for being on this. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you.
Thank you so much for having me, Pleasant. I'm really excited about this.
Me too. So let's dive in. Before we talk about what you're doing today and what you've learned, all those good things, I want you to take us back to that moment that you realized that you really needed to make a career jump. What was that like for you to actually get you to think, I have to do something so different?
So, really, what it came down to actually stemmed from my own health. I had some health challenges going on, and I knew that if I stayed where I wasn't going to get what I needed to actually physically get better. So, it started there. And then it moved to teaching from home instead of teaching in the public school system. At this point, I had my own children, and I wanted to be able to still be able to pour into them, but it almost felt like if I could give it like a description, an empty tank, like something was empty and I didn't understand what that was because I still had such a passion to teach. But I felt that there was something shifting and I just didn't know what I wanted to do next.
So it sounds like there was just such a misalignment that was starting to come into your life, and it was from health, it was from life, it was just things. It wasn't about that you hated your job or that you didn't like what you were doing. It didn't fit. How'd your family handle this? Like, you were dealing with health things, you were dealing with trying to manage everything in life. How did your family support you?
So I've been very blessed to have a family that's always been very supportive. And so that was very helpful. And I think it came to a point where I was trying to do it all
Yeah.
and realizing that this is not sustainable. And so something had to give. My health was getting back on track. I felt like I had better handle on that. And it came to a point where maybe this is for me. If I was able to get my health back on track, maybe I could help others do the same. It wasn't that I was just hanging up music altogether. That was still a passion of mine, but now I have my own children who love music. And so it was kind of the best fit then, kind of the best of both worlds. And that's when I just made the decision that, okay, if something's going to give, I was going to move away from teaching privately, like in music, and move to the space that I'm in now.
So it's interesting. You're facing health challenges, which I
Mhm.
mean, the reality is there's so many people that are facing those life altering health things that impact what they're doing on the day to day. Were you were you actively searching for something and a solution for your health, and like you just stumbled upon something? Like, how did you actually uncover the career that you moved into, which is health and transformation coaching?
So it really was one of those things, Pleasant, that I wasn't actively pursuing to find. I say that it really did find me, but it took me basically coming to the breaking point of recognizing something has to change and shift,
Yeah.
and if I would have continued in the direction I was, I wouldn't be where I'm at now, which is at a much more peaceful place and really being in the place that I do feel most fulfilled. And that's really my desire for everyone is to really get to that place that they're not just checking boxes out of obligation, but really to a place where this is what I want to do with my life.
I think that is the thing that people undervalue the most, and they don't realize how much it costs them when they are at their breaking point where they're so frustrated with life and they are trading their peace for a paycheck.
Mhm.
And they're constantly chasing, chasing, chasing and feeling like so frustrated because they're hitting walls and they
Mhm.
don't know how to break through that. So I'm really curious because it is something very common. How did you actually break through to make a change, given that you were in a state of a health situation, that your life was in chaos? How did you train your brain to actually do that?
It came to a point where I could not wait for my full belief in something. It was time just to take action, to take that next step. the scary step. People come to the place where like, those million questions come in like, well, what if this and what if that? And I just would come back in my mind with those same, "Well, but what if I don't?" And really come to terms with that. Literally give it a language that said, this is what it is, like face it and then move forward. It was time to really make a decision and not waver anymore.
And that decision point is the point where you either are gonna be super successful and do something that you're passionate about, or you're gonna feel like, "You know what? I can't," and that actually compounds the feelings of misalignment, frustration,
Yes.
and it has that trickle down effect. So, I mean, I'm curious about that too, of this the trickle down effect. Because of your health, what was it like even in your family life? Because you were having such a misalignment, what were you missing out on? What was your family missing out on?
Time, honestly, and that's honestly the most precious thing that we have. And what I mean by that is sometimes we think of just time like the hours traded for time. But what we don't also realize is time is also what you're spending this on as well. And if you're in a space where you might be present like physically with somebody, but your mind is in constant thinking, 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 and you can't stop, that's when you start to recognize something is very off because even when I'm present, I'm not.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that is so big. And people, I think they'll shift that time mentality and like, oh, it's really your cell phone, it's social media. And we're really
Mhm,
quick to identify those things as time
mhm,
suck. But we're not so quick to identify like, hey, your job or this situation is actually sucking your brain space. It is
mhm,
sucking your energy, and
mhm.
you're missing out on it. So it's like if we don't have that physical device or that physical thing to blame it on, it often goes unignored. So tell me about the conversation when you talk with your husband Carrie. He's awesome, awesome guy, great kids. And so tell me about that conversation. What was his reaction when you decided like, hey, I'm gonna leave my teaching profession and
Mhm.
pursue wellness and life coaching?
For Carrie, because he obviously knows me very well, he felt like this is actually a really good fit. It makes sense. I understand why this would be a great fit for you because I essentially, and one thing I will say, Pleasant, a little bit the what I've loved about the tools that you've provided, like within the Career Academy, is that a lot of those things are the exact things that are needed to make that move. And it's recognizing, wait a second, I have this skill set. But what if I took that skill set and applied it to a place that is fulfilling versus just, again, checking a box or thinking I'm doing what my degree said I was supposed to do? Right. And so I think that's what I really am passionate about also letting people know are like, what if you had the tools? And I think that's exactly what you provide.
And to piggyback on that, the place where you were at, you recognized what you were actually passionate about because you had this life experience to where your health was at risk.
Mhm.
You were able to find a solution, get the help and support that put you back in a position where you were back on your game. And so it's not easy by any stretch of the imagination, but you knew that that aligned with your passion. You knew that aligned with what you wanted to do. A lot of people don't have those experiences, and they can't connect the dots, or they're not thinking beyond the scope of their job to actually figure out like what are those experiences that I really, really love, that I enjoy and passionate about. And then how can I actually apply that to my work and my job? And that's the unique thing that we're trying to help people with. So I love that. So
Yeah.
let's talk about like, so you made this jump, you decided to leave teaching. It was not all roses. You started a business, you started working for yourself, it was not all.
Mhm.
So tell me about some of the scary moments that you had to face.
Well, again, because you're leaving something of security, right? You knew that this provided X income. So now I'm going to something that's unknown. And really it's that, well, what if I fail moment? But I had to keep reminding myself, but what if I don't? What if I actually am successful and I am actually to be able to do something that I really enjoy? And I think it also came a point where I came to terms with as well is that recognizing when it is time to pivot because it doesn't mean that things aren't going to get challenging or difficult because with any business, especially if you go in the route that I particularly chose, you're going to have ups and downs. There's going to be still hard times and hard decisions to make. However, wouldn't you rather make those decisions in something that you feel called to do versus the opposite?
Forced and feeling like you have relinquished control of your choice. That is I love that you brought this point about pivoting and knowing when to pivot because it is so often that we see people that are in this state of like, I have to get a job, I have to do this, I have to find something. And so they're trading, you know, that desperation for something that they're not going to really love, that is going to end up
Hmm.
not aligned to their life in the long run. And
Hmm.
they're going through hop, 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 hop. And that's a mental shift of if I recognize the signs, then I need to make that change before the change is taken from me, before my choice is taken from me, and I just have to settle for something else. And
Right.
so that's off that is so critical. Have you experienced those pivot points even with what you're doing today?
Absolutely. And that's the thing, that when I decided to go the direction I did, I wanted to make it very clear just within myself that I would never be in a place where I've had this, I have to, like, the obligation of just staying because of something. And that's been very difficult because, again, when you're passionate about something and you really want to see something go in the direction that you believe it should go, you also, in that space, especially when you're in the field that I'm in now, you have to be willing to pivot and recognize that there are going to be times where change is needed. And so absolutely, that's been something I've recognized. And that kind of actually even brought me to where I am now. Of, yes, I love helping people in their health, but I also am very passionate about helping people find what they feel most called to do, even if it means something different that it's not about me, right? It's not about what I want, but it really is more so about what they've been called to and their purpose.
And that calling is sometimes it's something you have to work towards, and I mean, we're very fortunate. It's like we're in this space where we're doing what we love and what we're called to do, but sometimes, there's been times in my life where I've had to be in a job or a career that I knew was not the one that I wanted to stay in, but I had to also then create the parallel path of how to make that change and how to transition out of there because then, if I didn't, I was going to feel frustrated and stuck. And so
Mhm.
I think that's a really important thing with the pivots is that sometimes you can't always just, completely take a different turn and leave what you're doing and go to something else. Sometimes
Right.
you have to put the plan in place and it takes time, but it's
Mhm.
in the end something so worthwhile and so valuable to do. And
Absolutely.
so
Absolutely.
I would love to hear. Once you changed and you moved into this role, do you remember that first moment where you were like, man, this is like a success moment of, I am so happy that I made this change. This is validating my shift and my pivot.
Absolutely. I can remember it like yesterday, actually. It's a very good friend of mine who was really struggling in her health as well. And when she had reached out to me that um, it's working, like the plan that we had put together is actually working, she was seeing better results. That was the absolute best feeling, knowing that, it wasn't me per se, but I had a role in getting her to this better path, right? And when I recognize that's something, especially when you have struggled yourself and you know that maybe you're helping somebody else out of a similar situation, there's just nothing that can replace that.
I agree. I totally agree. Is there a moment where you questioned it? Very much questioned it.
I don't know if I would say I questioned the shift that I made per se, because it really lined up with also what I love to do, is taking those same skills. If anything, if I questioned it, it was more so, but you didn't go to school for this.
Mhm.
That questioning that can kind of happen. Like, what are you doing? I mean, you went to school for music. You should be that's the path that you should be on. And then, but I'm easily reminded I haven't given up on music. I still love music, and I still am very passionate about doing music. It just looks different. I no longer teach it in that way.
It's not the moneymaker for your
Ex
life. Let's be clear. Making a career change is so valuable from a mindset perspective, but it's also important that's making us some money too. So I mean that's one thing that you have to evaluate is whether you can financially do it or not. What I've found is that the things that we're most passionate about, we actually figure out ways to work harder and smarter to get to the end result, which is, hey, I gotta feed my family, I gotta take care of them, I gotta do, that's a real thing for most people. We're not in the top where that's just no problem at all. So that is, I think, a side benefit is that you will actually get to your goals faster when you make those changes and you
Mhm.
actually align. You want to do what you're what you're called to do. And
Right. Absolutely.
have a process that you go through when you are making big changes or making these big decisions of like, hey, I need to change, or what is it actually that you teach your people, the people that you're coaching when they're making changes to what's your process like?
So I would say the biggest thing is to recognize we all have stories in our head and really recognizing is that truth or is that a story? Because sometimes it's a little of both. And if we don't actually come to terms with what's spinning in our mind and what that's the very thing that could actually be holding you back from success. And so really getting clear on what that is because I always say without clarity you can't have consistency. If you are not clear on actually for one what you're wanting to accomplish, well then it makes sense to why you're struggling with the plan, right? So it's really clearer on why you're actually even doing what you're doing in the first place. And I will be honest, on the times where I have lacked clarity, that's when I find myself very easily falling back into like a paralysis where I don't know what kind of shift to make next. And I'm talking about in like more of the micro decisions that we make, right? Not just on a macro
Yeah.
level. And that's where I would say is most critical is really getting that clarity because once you have that, then the decisions we make can really are going to line up with it.
I agree with you, and it makes me think, I mean, because you're in the health space, my husband's in the health space as well with what he does, and it's the people that want to make a healthy lifestyle change, the ones that really focus on it, like, I want this to be a lifestyle change versus I wanna, like, lose some weight real quickly and, get skinny or whatever. It's like those are that's the biggest differentiators. If you don't have a clear vision of why you're making the change, not just for the outward exterior, but like the actual benefits, it will go by the wayside.
Absolutely. Yes. And I would say that is probably the hardest part about what I do, to be
Mm.
honest. You can't make
That.
anyone right. You can't. And so that's is I would say the hardest part would be that very thing right there.
Yeah, if you don't make the change for yourself, and that's a big piece of what was built out in the course. It's like helping people to actually move through their micro changes, the mindset changes that need to happen in order to actually achieve the goal. Otherwise, no one's going to do it for you. Charles always says, my husband always says, no one can put your fork down. That's it. If you're not gonna do it, no one's gonna do it for you at all, so no one can do your push-ups. So let's do a little quick rapid fire. So I want to hear, like, when you're the first. Let's do a rapid fire first. So when you made the change, what was your first fear that you can remember having?
Failure. I mean, absolutely, like, will this work? But I just, again, combat it really quickly. But what if I don't? It's the same thing. So that was an easy one for me. I had to make that decision. So I always say one of my favorite quotes is, you know, courage is decision, fear is a reaction. Best quote, like I live by that. And I ask myself, that question, am I just reacting in this moment? Because if I'm reacting, that's like it takes courage to actually make a decision.
Yeah. To
No.
actually recognize it and see it for what it is. Not, this is not it. This is
Right.
not, there's something different. All right.
Mhm.
So then what was your first, what was your first unexpected, like, whoo, like I got to deal with this and I was not expecting it.
I'd say probably just again in any new venture that you're doing is it becomes down to like the time management of understanding like this still no matter whether it was teaching lessons or client support, those things still are important to understand I've got to block off time. So I can still fall into some bad old patterns of what I had mentioned to you before, like not being fully present because this is spinning. And so now that I recognize that, again, tools that we understand now and provide ourselves with to avoid that from happening.
Yeah, I love that. What was the first goal you had?
I would say for me was recognizing like income wise what was actually possible because when you go into the entrepreneurship world, you know, there is no necessarily a cap per se, but you also don't have what was comfortable when I was salary based, you know, as a teacher. So I would say my first goal, which I actually had reached that before I actually even left teaching, was okay, I want to replace my teaching salary. That was my first goal. And then from there, I just kept
Go.
asking myself more questions.
Last one. What was the first thing that you had to cut out of your life in order to make the change successfully?
Cut out. That's a very, very good question. I don't know if I can rapid fire that one. I would say,
I'm sorry.
oh, no, no, that's okay. I don't feel like I necessarily had to cut anything out, except I guess if you wanted to consider it a cut, would be prioritizing. So really cutting out this idea that it was just going to be figured out for me. Like I now was in charge of my schedule, which this also happened when I was teaching privately, but because of the way my schedule was with teaching privately, I knew when those lessons were happening. And to some extent with client support, it can be like that. But there's a lot more behind the scenes and flexibility with what I do now. But also that comes with, is it flexible or optional? Right. And so, in making sure that I was making it flexible, but still non negotiable.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
I love that. I love it. Let's talk about you today. If you were to tell your teaching self and give her a snapshot, what would be the skills that you would tell her like, "Hey, because you have this, you're going to be successful in this."
I would say for what I do now is because you have a heart to truly help students. So for instance, it was the music field, right? And if a student come to me and they really wanted to prove X skill, and that's what I was working with them, is I feel like what makes a good teacher is not just the fact that you're giving orders, but that you actually listen to what your students desire most. So I always said that it wasn't just about a curriculum that we were going to kind of go through, but I really wanted to match up with what they desired their outcome to be.
Yeah.
That same skill set really flows nicely to what I do now is because I'm asking those people, what is it that you really want to accomplish? Where do you want to end up? And let's create a plan that's going to get you to that specific goal. So that's transferable right there, that skill set.
Completely. What do you think when people are talking with you, when you're asking them to do that type of an exercise? Do you have a lot of people that are really clear with it and they have like a purpose, or do you find that you're still even coaching them on here's other ways to build those goals, here are things that you should be thinking about? Where do you find people's comfort level with answering that question?
Most people are very surface when they answer a question first.
Yeah.
Right? And I
Yeah.
was one of my favorite, it's not a podcast, but there's a video. The 7 layers of why is really it takes 7 of asking the question 7 times, the same exact question based on how they answered the previous one to really get down to the root that's going to actually get them to move and make a change. And so I would say if we stay surface, you can pretty much guarantee they're not going to get where they need to go.
To that point too, I mean, that is a big belief of mine as well. You don't need to have a broad spectrum of things that you want to change. You need to have a very deep funnel, because
Mm,
part of that funnel at the very bottom is the personal tie to it. So it's like when I talk with people about career change, like, oh, I want to get into remote work. Why? Why do you want to do that? And it's, oh, because there's more flexibility, it's this and this. And, that's all like surface. But when you really get to the heart of it, because, I I want to be able to attend my kids' games. I want to be able to, spend time with my family in the evening and not sit in traffic for 2 hours a day, and all those things. And it comes down to a very personal level. And that's when you feel very motivated to actually do something about it. For me,
absolutely.
I like working with my favorite coworkers, my 4 dogs. That's why I like working from home. Those coworkers. I will. So For you now, what does success look like? Beyond your bank account, what does success look like for
Peace, peace, getting to a place where I'm not motivated by like the grind, the hustle, the next. I think it's important to get clear on what you actually desire most. And sometimes that can be, again, people are can get stuck really even knowing what they want. And I've been there, and so I would say the place that I am now is being at peace and being able to, again, make those decisions without feeling like it's a have to obligation, not enough. The same place that I was, even in my music when I was teaching, it was okay, what next can I do? How can it was a constant. And I'm not saying that you don't want to pivot. I'm not talking about pivoting. I think it's actually really important to recognize we do need to pivot and for different reasons, right? But also just being at a place where I'm fully present when I say I'm here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're not giving surface level words, you're not giving platitudes, you're there. And I think
Mhm.
I know we're very similar with the way that with the way that we value our, parent styles with our kids and all that stuff. And
Yeah.
I know for me, I want to demonstrate to my girls, to my daughters, what it looks like to be an independent, strong female working woman that go after her goals, but also knows how to unplug and disconnect and be present with the family to support them
Yes.
and to be that mom, outside of just a working. That's the working mom is not me. It is the mom that I am to those girls and how I show up for my husband. So I know that's a huge one for me, especially too.
Absolutely.
So tell me a little about you're going to guest host the webinar from paralysis to pursuit. What's at the heartbeat of the session? What will people learn when they're
I think the biggest thing is recognizing. I think we all can relate to being stuck at some point, but sometimes we don't really understand why. And so being able to dive into the reasons why that may be, because once you have again clarity on the reason why you may be stuck, it's easier then to take those steps forward. It's kind of be like, okay, right now I'm in quicksand and I feel like I'm sinking, but once I start to understand, it's like little by little you start to actually be able to lift out of that. And I think that that webinar will give people some tangible tools to say, okay, here's why I've been where I'm at. Now, what do I want to do about it? Right.
I love that. And the why piece is like if people, you know, that reflection piece, that understanding is actually the unlock to not making the same mistakes that you've done before and to actually creating a plan to ensure that this path is going to be one that does not have the same outcome as the one that I was in before. But
Mhm.
people, I found that it's really hard sometimes for people to sit down and take that moment and figure out those things, because there's so much chaos. There's chaos in the mind, there's chaos in life. And it's like the introspection is so critical. I love that.
Mhm.
So in closing, and I love having you on here. I'm so excited about the webinar. I'm so excited about the things that you're going to be helping our our students that are going through the course with. But give your 30 seconds. You're speaking to someone that is like super stuck, feel a little chaotic. What would your encouragement for them be and an actionable, tangible step to just take to feel a little better today?
Absolutely. I would encourage them to get quiet, find a quiet space, and pen to paper. And there's something about writing something down, actually getting it out. But what is going up here? I can tell you right now, if you're in a place where you are feeling stuck and you are feeling overwhelmed and not sure what to do next or how to move forward, the very first thing I like to call it a brain dump. You
Mm.
need to recognize why this is so busy and it doesn't even give you an opportunity to think. Get that out. Again, give that language so that you know what needs to pivot and change and how to best navigate forward. But until you take that step, until you get very clear on what it is that's bothering you, why you feel misaligned, you're not going to know the direction you need to go.
Yeah.
So just starting there, that is huge. Huge.
I am all for it. I'm a pen and paper girl too. And I know there's been many times in my life where I've been able to say things and then, it sounds super jumbled when it's coming out because
Mhm.
in my mind, I know what I'm trying to say, but it doesn't really make sense when I'm relaying it. But it is that process of writing things down, taking the
Mhm.
time to be clear about it. So I love it. Well, I want to wrap up the session again. Thank you for coming on, and I look forward to the webinar. Details below when we get this posted up. But for all those out there, Roberts, amazing life coach and support. But check out the Career Jump Academy courses where we take you through these same strategies that we've used to make strategic career moves that have ultimately taken us from a place of feeling stuck, of feeling misaligned, to fulfilling and pursuing our passions in life. It's not something that you should be doing alone. You should do it with support, and you should do it with a roadmap that's been proven out to work for other people. So thank you again, and I'll look forward to hearing more from y'all.
Yes, thank you, Pleasant.
Thanks, Andrea.